Let's welcome in our GOP, our panel GOP political strategist, Malik Abdul, and also Grace Curley, host of The Grace Curley Show. Good evening to you both. Thanks so much for coming on. Grace, let's start with... Yeah, my pleasure. Grace, let's start with you. What do you make of Clapper saying that he's already lawyered up? I mean, it makes sense, obviously.
Yeah, it makes sense. The only thing that doesn't make sense to me, John, is why a lawyer would tell him to keep going on CNN. That would be my first piece of advice for him. If he was embroiled in this scandal, which he definitely is, he's eyeballs deep in this, I would say stop going on television. And actually, I was watching your fabulous segment with Bruce Lavelle, and he made the same comment about Hunter Biden. There's a lot of pros for the Trump administration and for the DOJ if these guys keep talking to stroke their own egos and to claim no wrongdoing. They have the receipts, and it doesn't matter how much the mainstream media, with the exception of Newsmax and a few other networks, want to dismiss this. There's real stuff here that we need to look into, including the fact that all of this administration seemed hell-bent on subverting the election of Donald Trump, and they have the proof. So if I'm James Clapper's lawyers, my first bit of advice would be shut your mouth. He doesn't seem to be getting that.
Yeah, which is generally good advice. Keep your mouth shut if you get in any trouble. Malik, Attorney General Pam Bondi, along with, has formed this so-called strike force and says that basically it will be reviewing Tulsi Gabbard's evidence. Remember, she's accusing the Obama administration of a years-long coup and treasonous conspiracy. Pretty damning allegations.
Very, very damning allegations. And people should understand how this all began. If you go back to the Steele dossier and the notion, remember, this was all part of this effort. This notion that Donald Trump had this rumor that Donald Trump had hired a prostitute or something in Russia to urinate in a bed. I mean, these were literally things that were part of this whole Russia collusion narrative. And what this resistance, what they're now saying is that, well, this is nothing new, because we knew that Russia, it was determined that Russia was intent on having some type of cyber operations to impact the elections. But what they did, though, they said that it wasn't that Russia tried to interfere in the election. It was that Donald Trump colluded with Russia to steal the 2016 election. So this is the history that Donald Trump's administration is actually dealing with. And I do think that it's appropriate for us to at least investigate it under this administration. Maybe nothing comes out of it, but an investigation is surely warranted by many of those people, like the 51 intelligence officials who said that Hunter Biden's laptop had all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation.
And Grace, the media, what we call the legacy media, the mainstream media, and I'm talking about, pointing fingers at the New York Times, among others, the usual suspects, were really marching in lockstep with the Obama administration on this. I mean, the New York Times, and I know for a fact, before Trump even took office in his first term, had a team of something like 20 investigative reporters whose sole purpose was to investigate any wrongdoing of Donald Trump, then candidate and, president-elect Donald Trump. So the media really was marching in lockstep with all of this, right?
Yeah, the media was a huge part of this problem. And the ironic part is now they're looking at this and they're saying, oh, it's time to move on. This is really nothing new. And it's absolutely ludicrous. I always say it should be like an equal time rule like you have in broadcasting. However much time in print and money you spent spreading fake news about Donald Trump and trying to hamstring his first administration. And let's not pretend it didn't work. Let's not pretend that he wasn't constantly fighting this asterisk of being a illegitimate president, as they all said. So however much time the media, the Washington Post, the New York Times spend giving each other prizes and typing all of this baloney up, they should have to spend correcting the record, but they won't, because again, this was all part of an operation to be part Team Democrat, to make Donald Trump look bad. And I love that we're calling out this conflation of, well, we know that Russia was trying to hack the elections. That has nothing to do with what you were spinning. You were trying to say that Donald Trump was an agent of Vladimir Putin. That's a pretty big difference. And I hate when the media tries to play smart and dumb at the same time, like they don't understand that difference. They absolutely do.
Yeah, and Malika, earlier this month, the FBI also, as we know, started an investigation into former CIA Director John Brennan, James Comey, the ex-FBI director, as part of and looking for any potential, basically, criminal actions as part of this Trump-Russia probe. The probe was ordered by Obama during a 2016 meeting. So I guess the question is, could this just really be the tip of the iceberg that we're starting to see here?
Well, we don't know what we don't know. And I'll say this, as someone who's, a figure of Washington, I live here in D.C., and I have for some time now, and I've seen Congress over and over again promise things that, as my granddaddy would say, that don't come out in the rents. Maybe something is here. We don't know. But I just wanted to piggyback off of what Grace was talking about, the media's role in this. You see this in what they're doing now with the Epstein files, that out of all of this list of clients or people in a contact book that Epstein has been connected with over the years, the only person that we're talking about is President Trump. That should let you know what the media's role is, once again, in trying to undermine Donald Trump's presidency.
Yeah, and speaking of which, Todd Blanche had a closed-door meeting, an interview with Ghislaine Maxwell. Grace, can she even be trusted? I mean, obviously, it'll be interesting, if anything, what she says, if it's released. But, is she a credible witness at this point?
No, I don't think so. I think they should definitely listen to what she has to say, and they should investigate everything on their own and kind of, uncover every bit of information that they can from what she has to say. But we have to keep in mind, this woman who's locked up, she wants to get a ride to the Capitol to get out of prison for the day. She wants to get a different kind of meal for the day. So you definitely have to take that into account. But I think a big issue that the Trump administration is having with this Epstein case, and I 100% agree with Malika about the way that the media is covering this. It really does tell you a lot about their integrity when covering this case. I think that part of the issue that Trump is having is that a lot of the members of his administration, including Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, really did talk about this a lot and talk about this level of transparency they wanted to give their MAGA base. And so now people are demanding that. And I think you have to take every bit of this with a grain of salt. You have to be careful before smearing hundreds of people who are on these contact lists. But everything should be investigated, and there should be this level of transparency because this is what Trump ran on.
Yeah. Malik Abdul, Grace Curley, great points. Good to see you. Thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, John.